Hi, I'm Colin,
And I'm Bert.
and you're watching Dabbing with Washington Artists. The idea is simple 6 questions
And 6 dabs.
as we interview artists that make Washington, Washington. So sit back,
Light those torches.
because this is Dabbing with Washington Artists.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill Church. I just did 6 dabs with these guys. It was awesome. I definitely recommend the experience. If you're a Washington artist, come on down and see how your iron lung challenge goes. Check me out on Instagram at Church Glass, and you can also check me out on Facebook, Bill Church Glass Art. And I think that's it. So take care, everybody.
For today's series of dabs, we begin our smoke session with a grape ape, a train wreck, and an original glue, and we will round the interview out with a dog's breath, a blue dream, and a blueberry haze.
I just want to say thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. If you are ready to get started, Bert, what do we have for dab number 1?
For number 1, we have a personal favorite of mine, actually, which is the Grape Ape.
Grape ape is always a reliable.
That one's always been one of my favorite tasting strains.
Grape ape is an indica dominant strain known for its rich, fruity terpene profile and tendencies to leave the smoker couch locked. We found these sugar diamonds at a shop on Route 99 in Everett.
Yeah, I can take the rest out here.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Nice and smooth, you know.
Yeah.
And so the first question that we like to ask everybody is, what role does cannabis play in your creative process?
Cannabis plays a pretty significant role in my creative process. I like, to get into the zone, and cannabis puts our mind in a creative space. It opens us up to different avenues that maybe we might not be thinking about when we don't have that influence of this substance. And it's not mandatory, but it definitely helps. It helps bring about new ideas, makes you think about things differently. And I remember when we were doing the medicinal, and that was the only way that we can get it, I went to one of my doctors that would prescribe it for you. And I remember her saying to me, she says, "Bill, I want you to pay attention to the strains that give you new ideas or make you think of something differently, because that's indicative that that's working on that neural network." And there's certain strains that I like more, that affect me, that just speak to me a little bit differently. And then my wife likes a totally different set of strains, and my gassy Chem Dog, where she's more of a blue dream, sativa, and and I think that the endocannabinoid system is a relatively new system that we just found out about in the early 90s, right? And so this compound connects into us almost like a key going into a lock. And I think
Absolutely.
and there's some keys that fit our lock a little bit better than others, and that's why I tell people to pay attention to those strains and what you really like, and so that's also part of the process, is not just how cannabis affects me, but how different types of cannabis, right? And then we go from sativa to indica, and then different parts of the day too, because early on in the day when I wake up, I'm drinking coffee, and when I'm blowing glass, you're working with your hands, and I found out that I'm not as good at like really precise stuff early on in the day because I'm shaky, and but at nighttime, I feel like I calm down, and then I really like to smoke some hash, and then you can really get into the detailed, finer stuff, because I'm not shaky, I'm not amped up from just waking up, and so it's not just paying attention to the cannabis, how it affects you, but also the time of day. There's a lot of things that go into.
For sure.
Right.
And that's like I mentioned earlier, Grape Ape the one we just smoked was actually one of my longtime favorites, just because of that. Like the terpene profiles are just right. You know, they give you exactly what you need. You know that. Like for me, I like that couch lock at the end of the day. You know.
Yeah, I can feel it in the back of my eyes right now.
Mhm.
You know, a little. I always like anytime that I get a little surge or a little bit of sweat on my brow. I
Yeah.
pay attention to those. Remember headband, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why they call it headband, because of that little surge of sweat, or like your palms get sweaty or something like that. I just pay attention to that, you know. Or sometimes there's strains that kind of give you a little panicky, you know, and sometimes I like that too, because it just kind of makes you hyper aware of your environment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a time and a place, I think, for, you know, just about, you know, all of this stuff, and it's just it's a tool for creativity, and but it's, like I said, it's not mandatory, but it definitely helps.
All right, so what do we have for dab number 2?
All right, so for number 2, we have Trainwreck,
Trainwreck.
another good classic. The a sativa dominant hybrid.
Very pungent.
Trainwreck is a classic sativa dominant hybrid known for its tendencies to leave the smoker feeling creative and chatty. We found this shatter at a shop in Bothell.
I'm really glad that we invested in that.
Me too, man. You know, very smooth.
Stoner ingenuity. I mean, you know, it's so great.
Oh yeah, man, we nerd out on so much stuff.
We've come a long ways.
Yeah, and when I first saw some people smoking dabs, I was just like, are they smoking crack over there? Like, I really thought it was crack. I walked into the studio.
I still
these
see
guys
that
over
from
there.
people over on like the West Coast all the time.
Yeah, and I'm like, what are they doing over there? Because I don't really hang, you know, I mean, it's just not my thing, you know,
Right,
to
right.
smoke crack, and, you know, to each their own, and I don't judge anybody for anything that they choose to do, but just not my thing, so.
So for our second question, how has living in Washington influenced your art?
The Pacific Northwest is a beautiful space. I mean, it's a pretty heavy area with glass, right? And so how I got into glass was I wanted to keep the memory of my good friend that passed away alive. And he initially taught me how to blow glass in 2006. But I train dogs, and that's what I do for a living, and my dog business really blew up, and so the glass kind of took a back burner. I really appreciate it, and I also have a lot of friends that are in the industry, and you know, I always support them. But when I moved up to Washington, I always had this draw for this medium. But when my friend passed away, I definitely decided to build my studio and to invest a lot of money. And I actually went and I contacted his sister, and I got all of his old equipment, his old glass equipment, and that's at my studio now. We're gonna make a little station just for him. And I feel, you know, I feel him watching over me when I create, and it was a big bummer, but you know, it was a catalyst for me to start blowing glass, and I also wanted to blow glass to do something that wasn't dogs, and now I make little glass dogs.
I saw those, they're pretty cool.
Yeah. You know, so I don't. It's just kind of all your passions kind of bleed into it, no matter what. But I'm so thankful I'm in Washington, because the glass scene is so huge here, right? And we have a lot of people that I can kind of tap into. I was just chatting with Storm and Norman just on my way over here, who's a great glass artist, and just a great resource that I can, anytime I'm stuck in the creative process, that I can tap into my friends that are here locally in Washington. Or I have a lot of shops, you know, one of the only distributors of Carladonna tools, which is a Murano, Italy, is here in Ballard, Washington at Spiral Arts. And so it's very cool to go down there and talk to Linda. Shout out at Linda. Love you, Linda. But to be able to go down there and kind of see what they get in stock brand new, you know, and so that's pretty cool, unique position to be in here in Washington. And sometimes I'll call my buddies that are somewhere else, you know, and that are blowing glass, and they kind of have me scout out some tools and stuff for them. So that's it, is being able to, you know, get tools, being able to tap into that brain trust, being able to have resources whenever I'm stuck in a creative process or can't figure out something, or just in a rut, like kind of like a writer's block, right? That I can go to my friends' studios and hang or you know, or work on a collab. I'll be heading to the mothership after today, and we're working on Bitcoin Millie.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
So we're in a Bitcoin, and so we're gonna make some millies so we can sell some glass out of for Bitcoin and stuff.
Yeah, he and I grew up in Tacoma, and it took me, I don't know how long, maybe like 14 or 15 years before I finally went and checked out the Museum of Glass. And it was like the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. It just completely blew my mind. We got to watch people, you know, doing live demonstrations and actually making stuff.
Yeah.
And they had like a video about the history of glass blowing and stuff like that. So like it was really cool to be introduced to the culture like that.
Well, and know that is like soft glass, right? And so this glass here that are making out our pieces that we're smoking out of, that has borosilicate glass, right? And so that has the element of boron introduced into the silica, okay? And so this allows, and it's essentially Pyrex, you know, the cooking material Pyrex.
Right.
So it allows so many more capabilities, rigidness, and if you take and go take a lighter to soft glass, it's going to shatter it, right?
Right.
Take a lighter to this stuff and
Or smoke out of it.
right. And then we have the quartz too, where we even take the torches and stuff too, and that is another element of another degree of I don't know, just what more that it can take and more that it can sustain. But so the soft glass that you see at the Museum of Glass, they need a glory hole, they need a lot of people, it's a big team, where this stuff that we work with is more of a torch, right? And
Gotcha.
and so one person can do it, but it's also this stuff acts a lot differently. The soft glass is a lot more malleable and stays malleable for a lot longer, where this stuff is pretty rigid. So as soon as you stop working with it, it firms up pretty quick, right? And I went to the Museum of Glass myself, and I've seen some artists that come around from all over the world, and I asked them, what do you guys think about torch work or borosilicate glass? And a lot of times they'll use the adjectives like stiff, angry, challenging, you know, like, and I find that to be interesting, you know, but I also find it to be cool because, you know, it's a challenging medium.
Yeah.
And even these guys that are world-renowned artists think that, and this glass has only been around for, you know, just over 100 years. And so the people that are making these colors and making these pipes and bongs are true pioneers. This has not been done before because this glass has not been available.
Right.
The original invention of this glass was for the lens of the Hubble telescope
Oh, nice.
in Corning.
I can see that.
You know,
That's awesome.
and they were trying to do glass, and they were bringing in like wheelbarrows and freaking dumping out this glass, and this dude fell into it, dude. Like it was gnarly, man.
Jeez.
And so they had to, you know, there's videos out there of them, documentaries of the Hubble telescope. You know, I think that, but that's where this glass came from, and look at where it's ended up.
Right.
Good to go. So what do we have for dab number 3?
So number 3, we have Original Glue.
Original Glue is an indica dominant hybrid that hits like a pure indica. Known for its couch lock and euphoric effects, this strain is a favorite here in Washington. We found these saucy diamonds in a dispensary in Seattle.
Did smell? I mean, it was nice and a mellow smell, and it's a nice mellow taste.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with legalization, we've seen a rise in the culture of marijuana. You know, it's no longer taboo for you to talk about smoking. You know, you hang out with people, smoke, do dabs, and nobody furrows their brows at you anymore. And it's paved the way for even more culture to be added into it. You know, and such we have shows like you were on the Action Bronson, and now we've got our show, Debbing with Washington Artists. Have you seen an increase in the industry, and has it influenced the kind of pieces you create?
It doesn't really influence the pieces that I create, just because I like the pieces that I like, and I'm more, because if we look at the pieces that are coming out, that are perk and super high tech and whatnot, and I get it. I know why it's the functionality, and it definitely makes sense. But I'm more of the old school route of big heady pieces.
I've always been a fan of heady work, or
Yeah.
heady glass.
And so we have, and it's a draw, because when you see that a lot of people coming into the fold, a lot of times the original intent and the original culture, and I think that it's important to acknowledge the original culture of cannabis and to look back at the old school, because we have to remember that people were thrown in cages for this. Their lives and their livelihoods and were taken away from them.
Absolutely.
And they were put into a box, and the people, people are so passionate about this that they're willing to risk that. And now that has gone away, I think that it's important to always take time out to remember that period and just say, hey, look, man, we kind of got off a path here as a society by throwing people in a cage for this, and to celebrate the people that actually do throw people in the cages for this. I think that it will be a big scar and big mar on the face of law enforcement, because of the victimless nature of this. And even the cops that I've worked with, I've asked them, who would you rather deal with? Somebody who is drunk or somebody smoking weed all day long, smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first dope show, Dope Cup I went to, right? Where they gave us 10 strains and we smoked it all, and my wife was a champ, man. She's like to the head, every single one. I was just like, dang, once she's got a competitive streak, a nature of her. So
That's awesome.
and so, but we went to this dope show, the Dope Show Awards, the first one, and I remember, man, I turned and I hit this guy, like I didn't see this dude standing there, and I nailed him hard, like with my shoulder. And this dude turns around and he's like tattooed head to toe, not as much as you, but like literally like G'd out. And I knew that if I was in a bar, it would have been a totally different outcome. But we ended up hugging it out, and just like, and I didn't know this guy, and because of that event, just this this culture, and not only that, but we're stoked to be smoking weed at a freaking warehouse in South Seattle with everybody, and they have these hors d'oeuvres and stuff that they're passing out, and then a cop came with the fire marshal to investigate it, man, and you could just tell that this, I don't know, this has an influence on how people feel and look towards that uniform. And so it's a two-way street. We have to celebrate the fact that this culture is growing and becoming mainstream, because I think that cannabis is a very, very important substance for our society to evolve into a higher form of consciousness, right? And we spoke about in the very first question the creative process, and religion aside, regardless of where we believe we come from, wherever we believe we come from a creator, right? Whether that's God or Jehovah or whatever you call it. Therefore, wouldn't that make us mini creators, right? If we come from that, then that's what we are, right? And so when we come here in creating, I think is a huge part of why we're here, is to create, to take thoughts and make them things, and that's what's cool about what you guys are doing, and there's many different ways to create, and there's nothing here in this room or this room itself that wasn't a thought before it manifested into physical reality, right? And so we have to acknowledge that, it's very important, and especially to that creative process to be injected into a society. If it allows us to create more, then hell yeah, man, we're gonna have many different ideas and You know, that's why it's important. And then not only that, but it's therapeutical. I mean, mental health aspects of it. Not only that, but just the health aspects of it too. The omegas 3, 6s, 9s, the CBDs, cannabidiols, cannabivernons, cannabizenons, tetrahydrocannabinols, delta 9s. Like we have so many. There's 500 at plus chemical constituents. Or was it 5,000 plus chemical constituents? I don't know. But and we focus on 2 and 3. Where I mean, I think that as it grows more and more mainstream, and we have more and more acceptance and more research, that we're going to be kicking ourselves for keeping this out of the societal reach. And I think it's a cornerstone as far as health is concerned, just like the endocannabinoid system that we talked about,
sure.
and how
Absolutely.
it fits into a key, into a lock, right? But then it also is a parallel communication center, which allows all of our various systems, our circulatory, excretory, nervous system, skeletal system, to communicate with other systems,
Right.
right? And so that's why it has tumor reducing properties, allows it to clear this stuff out, right? And it's a fatty lipid in itself. This stuff is hash oil, right? And a freaking bitch to get off, but knowing that it's a fatty lipid that allows itself to squish between the blood-brain barrier, right? And we're always looking for things that are going to do that. And I mean, there's so many avenues that we need to investigate with this wonderful compound. But in doing so, we need to not forget those that came before us to allow us to make this culture possible.
For
right?
sure.
And to kind of know that we wouldn't be where we are, and that there was a culture before this that is very important.
For
Definitely
sure.
a more hardened culture, because like you were saying, it was back when the time when you could do 25 to life for having a fucking dub sack in your pocket.
The rules that you must follow with that, right? It becomes illegal, and I mean, people were killed. People still are killed for it, and it's just, and the bullshit needs to stop, and we need to. Can I swear?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Oh, this is a kid show.
Yeah, no. It's a kid show. Sorry, but it's gone on for far too long, and but I think that the more that people, especially once they experience it for themselves, and we find out that the largest growing crowd of cannabis consumers are the elderly.
Yeah.
Has a
Yeah.
lot of medical benefits.
Yeah, well, not only that,
Well,
but dude, they're like, dude, I'm in a good mood, dude. Like
A lot of them, the only hang-up was that it was illegal.
Well,
And
that was
you know.
Anslinger, right? And
Yeah.
and then not only that, but then we also had the propaganda arm
Yep.
pointed to them, and that was the war propaganda that came back. We want you for World War II to join the army, and then they saw how effective that was, and then we had the prohibition of alcohol as well. And then that kind of rolled over into, no yawning, Mr. Man.
Sorry.
No, you're good. We have the kind of, and so then they took and just transmuted the Anslinger's job, which was the prohibition czar, to prohibit the cannabis now, right? And I mean, we study history. Don't believe a word I say. I tell people, don't believe me. Don't believe anybody. Don't just take objective or take declarative sentences as fact.
Yeah.
Do your own research, and we live in a time of information, right? And by being ignorant, that's a choice. We can look into things, and we can do and study history.
Yeah, absolutely.
The best form of knowledge comes from experience.
Yeah. All right. So what do we have for dab number 4?
All right, number 4, we have dog breath.
Right up my alley, man.
I know, right?
I'll be the judge of this one.
Dog's Breath is a newer indica-leaning hybrid that is known for its powerful body high and complex terpene profile. We found these sugar diamonds at a dispensary in Linwood.
Beautiful.
Yep, mellow, totally mellow.
All right, so you have a lot of pieces that are not cannabis related, and we wanted to ask, do you feel like people in the glassblowing community are more accepting of cannabis related products versus like, say, a painter who did paintings of cannabis stuff?
Yeah, I mean, when I asked Action, my buddy Action Bronson, you know, he says that it's like, imagine the painting. I was like, why do you invest so much? Because that's where I met him at one of my friends. I didn't even know him or anything, and then we hit it off. And then he called me up. He invited me. I've been on a couple of his shows. He had me on the Untitled Bronson show when I was training the Vice Studio Dogs in 2019, I think. Yeah, and then he had me on a few episodes of Ancient Aliens. We were down in LA.
We saw those.
Yeah, that was cool. And I sent you the one with the glass artist one, but I was on a few other ones. But I was talking to Action about, you know, why he collects these high value or high priced pieces, and he's like, bro, he's like, it's just like a painting on the wall. Like what you, except for imagine taking off the painting and being able to smoke weed out of it with your homeboy. You know, it's like that's, and I was like, yeah, man, it's kind of interactive, right? Interactive in a way that, I mean, is bonding, it builds rapport. Now there's two subsets in the glass industry. I mean, there's people that do non-functional, and that's what we call non-functional and non-functional. And you'll see something and you'll be like, whoa, man, that's so cool. That's a beautiful sculpture. And then they'll be like, dude, it's functional. No way. You're like, look, and then they turn out, they pull out the piece and show you where the bowl goes and stuff like that. And then you have like, that's where the artist like Buck comes in, and Joe P has a bunch of really, you know, high end, like it just doesn't even look. Marcel has some earlier where like it was hanging on a wall. Marcel would have these dolphin pieces with the Dichro, and he would just see it, and then you would take it off the wall, flip it over, and you'd have a bowl there and be able to smoke.
That's crazy.
Right? And so it just brings a different element of experience with that piece, right? But the thing is that it also is drawing into the fold, just like the previous question, as we see the culture grow, it's gonna be a beacon for people that kind of wanna get into it for the wrong reasons, and that means making money by any means necessary, right? By selling shitty product, by like the chemicals, like pesticides and shit that might make your stuff poisonous. Like there's a lot of things to think about in this industry, and you know, it's the same thing that with the art, it invites people that might be in it for the wrong reasons, right? And that's what I was speaking about earlier. It's very important to remember the culture that became for us.
Absolutely.
Right? Because now it's a lot easier for this culture to exist, and a lot easier for us to stand up and be proud of this and be able to smoke weed or smoke dabs on camera. The same thing with the art is there's some people out there that blow these functional pieces that don't smoke weed. And they got to question why that is, right? You know, and there's some, I'm not naming any artists, but that's, you know, that's, and they make beautiful pieces, and but there's a couple aspects to this. Like, do you I would expect people that are painting and smoking and reflecting on that culture to be taking part of that culture. It just would make sense to me. It would be more appealing to myself as far as a buyer or somebody of that piece to be able to maybe smoke down with that artist, you know, or to be able to, I don't know, just to know that they share the same passions that I do, and just like with the glass and how my dogs and doing the non-functional little doggy figurines that I do, right? It's not, it's just one of my passions that bleeds into another, and that's what I'm speaking about, is like, this would be a passion of the weed bleeding into the art, right? And that's what right? And so, even though I still do smoking apparatuses, you know, the reason why I love that I blow glass, I can make my own pipes, man. Like if I break a pipe, dude, I just go out and make myself one, dude. And it's so cool. Like all my pipes I've made, and I'm like, dude, this is so rad. I'm smoking out of my own shit, and that's basically it. That's how passionate I am about it. Like that's like I wouldn't care if I sold another piece, and in fact, the first 3 years I refused to take a cent for any of my glass. I gave it all away.
Oh, that's
Oh, nice.
awesome.
But I gave it away to my homies and the people that I really looked up to and stuff. And but once I started that 3-year mark, I said, okay, cool, dude, I'll charge money for my glass, and I will. And so now I am, and I'm starting to make a little cash, but it's still just a hobby for me. It's a passion, and I appreciate it. But I think too, when you put that money motivator behind stuff, it kind of turns it, especially if you need that money, right? And I mean, in some aspects it's good, but in some aspects it's going to lock you down into what makes you money and not get you out into the mystery of the scariness of innovation, right? And,
For sure,
and
yeah.
stepping out and being vulnerable and being like, dude, this sucks, I know, but it's what I believe, or I know and believe, or I'm trying to do, right? And so and when you're innovative, if you're not embarrassed by the first things that you've put out, you've waited way too long.
All right.
What do we got?
So for this one, we've got Blue Dream.
Blue Dream is a sativa dominant strain known for its uplifting and energetic high that tends to leave the smoker in a haze. These saucy diamonds had an impressive 6% terpene profile, and we found them at a dispensary in downtown Kent.
Good stuff. So we've noticed that you've done a lot of fumed or color shifting pieces. It's a technique that was popularized by Bob Snodgrass. Do you see these techniques becoming more popular among collectors and dabbers?
Yeah, I mean, it's just different techniques, and they just take and innovate more and more. I mean, the fume work, Bob was the original. Snodgrass and he's still around, still making pieces. He makes fumed skulls now. Yeah,
Oh, that'd be cool.
Super cool, and he works out of a Volkswagen bus that's been converted into a glass studio. And he's in his 70s or 80s. He's up there, but you still see him at some of these glass events and stuff. And yeah, absolutely, fuming is very popular. And it's just, it literally is where we have a gold coin or a silver coin there, and we'll take a chunk of that silver or gold, put it in the flame, and let the fume actually hit the glass, and it makes that iridescent kind of
That's
really
awesome.
cool effect,
Awesome.
And there's different temperatures that you hit that fume at that will get different effects as well. And some of these people have really, some of these artists have really refined, how they do it, and they have some wonderful pieces, and you can see the fume, and they've even got it to where it can transition, and they can control that transition because they've done it so much, and they're transitioning colors like a green to a pink. And so when you see the blues and the greens and the fume, that's a silver fume, and when you see the pinks and the reds, that's a gold fume. And so there's different, and then we have a scalloped pattern on the glass. So if you look at, it's basically just like a lined glass. I don't think we have, kind of like that perk down there, but they have glasses that come in tubes like that, and so they'll fume the inside of that, and then they'll be able to twist that, and it makes this like really cool kind of matrix or like wormhole type of thing. And
That's
there's
awesome.
reticellis, and there's different terms for this stuff, and it's just a hobby for me. But some of these guys, they got the terms locked down, and the techniques and everything. And then you have artists like F Time Glass down in Denver, who does a lot of really big chunky fume work, and then he'll layer his fume work on top of it, and then. Who's Kevin Nail? Kevin Nail's an amazing fume artist. Dosh, D-O-S-H, Dosh World Glass does these fumes where they line it out, they fume it, and then they would do what's called a cut and flip. So they cut the glass, they flip it over, and then you see like the underside of that glass is what comes through on the piece. And it's just, when you look at it, it's pretty cool pattern, but when you understand how these pieces were made, then you respect it even more, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's one of the things, like, that when I became a glass artist, probably the biggest thing that it did was it made my respect my glass artist friends even that much more.
Yeah.
Because it's not an easy material, and not to work with. You're working with very high temperatures. And to give you an example of how high temperatures we're working with, like my buddy, the Buck Glass, he was blowing glass and he had a piece fall off and fall into his boot, and it hit his ankle, and it burned him so quickly, so fast that it burnt his bone marrow.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so this stuff isn't a toy, right? You need to keep your wits about you at all times. So even though we're smoking copious amounts of cannabis, it doesn't mean that we're checking out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it makes us hyper focused. And then I look at it as a moving meditation too, because we're focusing on one piece. We're present in that moment, and we're moving, we're keeping, and we're really that's how we get into the flow and become flowers. Flowers. Is the meditation, and but yeah, the fume stuff's just one of the techniques, and I really like fume work, dot stacking. I like flips, like Punty. Punty is one of my favorite artists out of Colorado. WJC, if you look at some of his, he does geometric pieces, and some of these pieces, like WJC's, a piece like this of WJC's would sell about $85,000.
Oh wow. Wow.
These guys are ballers, but they're OGs in the glass game too. They've been doing this for a long time, and even they're part of that subset of the culture that was before the mainstream. They were doing this back when this would get them for making the paraphernalia or the legal stuff. Would get them. It's all part of the this little underground culture that now has become a little bit more mainstream. Thank God.
Being allowed to, yeah.
Right, but these artists are now being paid what they should, and being recognized for what they're creating. But there is a technique, and there's a process behind that technique, and once you start to gain that knowledge through the experience, you just respect it all that much more.
So for dab number 6, we have Blueberry Haze.
Dab number 6, Blueberry Haze.
Blueberry Haze is a sativa-dominant hybrid known for its sweet and earthy smells and tastes, and tendencies to leave their smoker focused and creative. We found these sugar diamonds at a shop in Shoreline.
Ooh, I like this. A little fruity. And it's purple. No.
It looks like caviar almost. Definitely got that sweet scent to it.
Yeah.
You said it was blueberry haze?
Yeah, this is the Blueberry Haze. It's a sativa dominant hybrid.
And then it with the exclamation.
Yeah.
All right, last question we got for you. The Pacific Northwest is home to both glassblowing and dab culture. Do you think non-cannabis centered artists like Chihuly have legitimized and uplifted pipe or bong creation, or have those people who make pipes and bongs done more to popularize glass art?
Definitely the people that have made the pipes and bongs have done more to the pipe, because even when we go down to the soft glass, like where Chihuly and stuff, and we go to their events, they're all like, dude, tell us about what you guys are doing. because our pieces fetch way more than theirs, right? Right? Chihuly and the top artists, that might not be the case, but there are some artists out there that these pipes and bongs, they definitely feed. Some of them have fetched 6 figures.
Wow.
Right, we have the Mothership Sagan piece, and then we have the Team Japan Mothership piece. Both of those are in the 6 figures, and then the Mr. Gray Skull is a 6-figure piece as well. So
that's crazy.
Yep, and then I'm looking forward to the first 7-figure piece, the first $1 million piece.
Oh
right?
My goodness,
That would be cool. I picture it with like jewels or whatever, like Ryan's. They're already faceting and taking and borrowing stuff from the jewel in the rhinestone industry, precious metals and you know, different things that I expect that to be, you know, very high end bond. You look at it and just like, you know, I have clients that I know that have built wine cellars that, you know, they spent $1 million on, and their house downstairs is a whole wine cellar. Now that the mainstream acceptance of this cannabis is, I expect people to really spend maybe on some smoking rooms, and you know, especially a lot of the hip hop artists and stuff. When I was on those television shows, and we brought them in a bunch of glass and featured that. I mean, there's definitely a sub industry, a sub culture of the high end, super high end glass, right? And so that's definitely. But I think that those guys kind of paved the way for themselves. I think that they definitely are trailblazers, and we see new stuff coming out as far as technique and functionality of this glass, and it's cool. I love innovation. I love when people create and make things better, and those that are passionate about it, those that use it, are the ones that know what the hang-ups are, right? And so they're like, man, I just wish that this could be that way. And for somebody it might seem really simple or stupid, right? But for somebody that's passionate about it, that little tweak can make all the difference in that experience for that person. And so, you know, that's where we get like perks with multiple holes. That's where we get perks with like just different shape perks, different shape rigs. We're looking, and first thing that we do when we grab a piece of glass that we take and hit it, and we're looking for the functionality of it. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into this subculture of glass that people that are just kind of looking on from the outside don't or might not necessarily get. But you know, it goes deeper than what meets the eye, and I attribute that 100% to the glass artists.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dabbing with Washington Artists. Please be sure to give us a like and follow for more content.
And check below for links to the artists and their most current projects.
And remember, with your support, local art thrives.